So if you know Chuck E. Cheese, and if you remember going there all the time, you know what I'm talking about when it comes to the animatronic shows. As a person that grew up with the animatronics, let me explain how I feel and what needs to be done. Now, for those of you that don't know what Chuck E. Cheese is, it is a family-oriented restaurant chain that offers food like pizza, salad, as well as arcade games and kiddie rides, birthday parties, and other special occasions. Previously, their most common staple that they've had over the decades is the animatronic band, featuring a variety of original characters in the franchise, as well as the music that they perform. Chuck E. Cheese was founded in 1977 by Nolan Bushnell, who was also in charge of the video game company Atari, and opened its first location in San Jose, California. When CEC was first established, it was originally known as Chuck E. Cheese's Pizza Time Theater because of the theater rooms it had. And fun fact about it is that Chuck E. Cheese was originally going to be a coyote. However, when Bushnell got the costume, he realized that the costume is actually a rat and not a coyote because of a rat tail that's part of it. And Chuck himself was originally a coyote because the restaurant chain was going to be called Coyote Pizza, but that never came to fruition. Chuck E. Cheese himself is the main character and the host of the place. It was originally a sassy rat with a New Jersey accent that wore the iconic red derby hat. Other characters were created in the process of the Pizza Time Theater, including Jasper T. Giles, who was a hound dog that used to be insane, Pasquale the Chef, which he was originally known as the Singing Chef, and Krusty the Cat, who was one of the original members of the band. Unfortunately, Krusty retired in 1978 and was replaced by Mr. Munch, who is a purple pizza-eating monster that had a scratchy voice for a while, although Krusty has not been forgotten by the older fans of the community. There were also guest stars, including Harmony Howlett, Madam Oink, and several others, as well as the Walrettes, which they were unfortunately phased out when modern Chuck E. Cheese started rolling in. And yes, Helen Henny was involved from the beginning, but had different appearances and styles, and she originally used to constantly make chicken noises because that's what her character was, and she's a hen. While Chuck E. Cheese originally had a portrait type of stage, the place also had theater rooms ahead of time, including the lounge. They eventually had a balcony stage featuring the Pizza Time players that we know and love. The other animatronics were Dolly Dimples that played the piano, and the King, a lion that impersonated Elvis that played the guitar and swung from side to side while performing. Also, the animatronics were originally cyberamics, as they had latex masks and cosmetics at first, and then they switched to what they are today, although they have limited movements. But somehow, Chuck E. Cheese wasn't the only one thriving in show business, as its competitor, Showbiz Pizza Place, came along and tried to make the same Pizza Time Theater tradition better. While that restaurant chain was founded by the late Bob Rock, the animatronic band was the Rockefeller Explosion, created by Aaron Fechter, who is basically the head of Creative Engineering Incorporated, and the mascot was the one and only Billy Bob, as they had better moving animatronics on 3 separate stages, which is why the concept is called the 3-stage, and the animatronics are also known as the CEI animatronics. Not to mention, but Showbiz had a sports room at one point. So yeah, both companies had their own slogan. The Pizza Time Theater had Smile America, say Chuck E. Cheese, and Showbiz Pizza had Come for the Pizza, Stay for the Fun, and America's #1, Family Fun. However, since those companies were competitive, Chuck E. Cheese tried to obtain the rights to use the Rockefeller Explosion, believe it or not, as those extra characters. But that never came to fruition due to a disagreement between Creative Engineering and Showbiz Pizza Time Incorporated. Despite the horrible idea from CEC to take down the Showbiz animatronics and make everything their own, Pizza Time Theater and Showbiz Pizza Place had merged. Their slogan once again changed, and Chuck E. Cheese would make special appearances at many Showbiz locations. The merger occurred also because of the video game crash that the Pizza Time Theater and Atari were suffering from. The merger's new slogan would now be Where a Kid Can Be a Kid, which became an exclusive icon for Chuck E. Cheese, and that slogan was used for a very long time, for 3 decades, although it is sometimes still used to this day. Unfortunately though, it was a death trap for Showbiz, as all other Pizza Time Theater and Showbiz Pizza Place brands were phased out for the modern Chuck E. Cheese that we know and love today. Well, not all the locations, but a lot of them were. The Rockefeller explosion was phased out for concept unification that spine-tingled its fans, converting it into Munch's make-believe band. And every single Pizza Time Theater-related stage was phased out for other stages for Cymoramics, including the Road stage and the 2 stage. Well, before that, they had a Rocker stage and a Port stage. They later got a 1 stage for newer locations at the time. Over the decades, Showbiz Pizza Time had test stages that either barely made it to locations or never expanded them nationwide. However, they got a different concept for the animatronic show in the modern days, as Studio C came along and nearly changed everything. There were 3 different types of stages: Alpha, Beta, and Kappa. The Alpha stage had an interactive studio where the kids could go to the blue screen and mess with the camera while being part of the show, and they had an interactive console featuring computer games related to Chuck E. Cheese. And they had one animatronic featuring Chuck E. Cheese himself. Phase by phase, Chuck E. Cheese would continue to be the most popular destination for kids, as it is exclusively a casino for kids, because they gamble tickets, which, speaking of gambling, the place does teach you how to gamble, I'm not gonna lie. And yes, from the very beginning, Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz had tokens for guests to insert most certain games and print out paper tickets whenever you win, which made both of them very special. You know, my family and I had been going to Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz from like the beginning, because my parents, as well as my older cousins, went to those places when they were growing up in the 80s and 90s. And that tradition was even passed down to me, my brother, and my cousins, which was very nice of them to do, although I got into it more than anybody in my family. And the coolest thing about it is that my dad actually worked at a Chuck E. Cheese, but the one over in Sharonville when he was a teenager. As much as I was a longtime fan of Chuck E. Cheese, I was into everything. The shows, the food, the games, etc. Hell, even when YouTube became popular, I started watching the show tapes and the animatronic shows of any kind that were filmed by people like parents of children recording home videos, and of course the Chuck E. Cheese fans that love capturing the moments of the iconic staple in the restaurant. However, due to certain changes that made the place less fun and interesting, including brighter lights in the ceiling, the downfall of the animatronics condition, the discontinuation of the curtains, the less offerings for older audiences like the parents, for example, and the constant fights that occur because of how much beer that people drink at the place. And yes, they sell a shit ton of beer and only give each person 2 beers instead of 1 for each. I mean, Chuck E. Cheese had gone way downhill from then. And what makes it worse is that Chuck E. Cheese had to give itself a makeover, or as I call it, a reboot of the franchise. The mascot himself went from a rat type of mouse with a New Jersey accent to a rock star mouse. They also did this without letting one of the voice actors know, which, by the way, that was one of the stupidest things that any company in this world would ever do. And then in 2017, when the franchise turned 40, it was announced that they would be getting rid of the animatronics at every single location due to age, less attention that they've gotten over the years, and how expensive that the repairs are for the animatronics, and how expensive they have gotten, which claims that it makes them hard to maintain, even though the dance floors and giant TV walls are more expensive to fix than the animatronics, based on what I've heard. This would also be part of the remodel phase called 2.0. Honestly, that devastated many fans, as most of them from the previous generations grew up with the animatronics. And let's just blame on Tom Leverton with the planning he had while he was the chief executive officer of Chuck E. Cheese. You know, over the years, even after Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz merged, many people had left the fan base and or stopped going to those places in general altogether, which literally gives the place an unfortunate call. But not for very long. Once the 2020s started, things began to change even more, and Chuck E. Cheese started to clearly show some growth, but not when COVID came along. See, during the pandemic, Chuck E. Cheese had to file for bankruptcy because they were in a financial crisis like everybody was, so the company decided to do something very special, and they partnered with mobile food deliveries like Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub, as it disguised itself as a different restaurant called Pasquale's Pizza and Wings, named after one of the characters from the franchise itself. You know, I actually ordered their food a couple times, and I will say this. Their pizza is the same as it is at Chuck E. Cheese, but they have it in 8 slices instead of like 12. And they also have different flavors in the wings, as well as salads and french fries that they serve, which not to mention, but they actually have the french fries seasoned. This also started regaining popularity in other main characters, like Pasquale the chef, for example, which that made it more interesting. Then, as the COVID pandemic slowly ended, one of the locations began to show progress of improvement, as the Pineville location started to restore and decorate the 3 stage to its former glory, and by last year things began to change for the company. They did a local life tour for a summer show, partnered with Kids Bop, and they're about to build a Chuck E. Cheese themed water park and create a game show that'll be based on Squid Game. Now onto the topic that's very relevant for this video. When the retro concept was quietly rumored, everyone thought it was a joke and that it would be impossible for Chuck E. Cheese to keep the animatronics at a few locations in a hybrid format. Well, it turns out that the company decided to keep the 2-stage in Northridge, California, which by the way, Northridge is one of the towns in Los Angeles, as demanded by fans that knew how retro that Northridge is. And the fans were pleased by that decision, except they would say that it would be the only location to keep the animatronics, as in the quote-unquote permanent residency. We the fans believed that statement was bullshit, and some of us knew that the Pineville location that contains a 3-stage in Charlotte, North Carolina would be next on the list, even when someone had made a petition to save that type of stage, even with how much effort that they had put on those stages. In the end, the company did a survey this year for its actual fans regarding what other stores that could keep the stages besides Northridge, and one of the concepts was a retro type of concept where they would have a memorabilia, karaoke nights, and music from the 80s and 90s, which honestly for a second there I thought that meant cover songs. And then not too long ago, Chuck E. Cheese announced that they would be keeping 4 more stages. Well, first they announced that Nannywood would be the second hybrid location, which pissed everybody off because they thought it was going to be the second and final hybrid store, as it was previously said. I think they were saying it as a surprise regarding others, which I think it was a dick move for something like that, and not being honest about anything exciting. By the way, Nannywood, New York has a Studio C beta, but there were rumors about the Studio C programming to return, but it was quietly confirmed that it was not true, especially since that type of stage doesn't work on their new system called Navori. And we'll be talking a little bit about Navori here soon. And then they announced 3 other locations to do the same. Those that were chosen are Springfield, Illinois, that has a CU1 stage, which by the way, CU stands for Concept Unification, Hicksville, New York, which contains a 1 stage, and the one and only Pineville, North Carolina, that contains a historical 3-stage. And by the way, Pineville is actually located in Charlotte, North Carolina. I mean, they already had their grand reopenings, which they were all successful. And as a former Chuck E. Cheese fan myself, I am very glad that they did. And Pineville brought 2 prop characters back, both Munch Jr. and Pizza Camp. And the best part about the magic of Chuck E. Cheese is that they have made the curtains operational again, except for Springfield and Nannywood, since Studio C isn't being programmed at all, and basically the CU1 stage does not contain any curtains. And speaking of Nannywood, they are doing Throwback Thursdays, which is a weekly event that the location now does. Despite a little bit of disappointment, I am very pleased about this smart decision that the company has made to modernize the tradition of attending visits to a place where kids and families can still have fun, while offering other things for today's generation of children, as the animatronic shows nowadays are more destinational attractions for adults. Honestly, when I was growing up, I used to love their shows very much, and they were very unique because of not only the original songs that they have had, but the covers and parodies that Chuck E. Cheese and the Department 18 used to do. That made me keep my Chuck E. Cheese spirit going. Particularly the cover songs, because that helped me get into my interest in music, especially with songs that would be played on the radio, because when I was a kid, there were no streaming apps, but there was eventually iTunes as well as iPods, because they were in the early stages of music streaming. Also, believe it or not, they actually did cover songs from the very beginning, same with Showbiz. Nowadays, you just don't hear those cover songs by Chuck E. Cheese from Chuck E. Cheese anymore. It's been like 10 years since that changed, because let me tell you something. Right after 2014, the company had to drastically change the shows and slowly move away from the copyrighted material, including parodies, even though they had a mechanical licensing which costs about 9.1 cents per song for the entertainment department to use. I know that because I took a media law course in college, and I also did some research on types of licensing for music. They quietly ended that tradition, which made me very devastated, and I'm sure that devastated you guys as well, because for those of you that are more into cover songs than the Chuck E. Cheese originals, I'm sure they're into something like that, like pop music of any kind. But what really happened regarding the change was that the department called Department 18 that does the shows for Chuck E. Cheese got sued back in 2015. The reason behind this disgusting situation is that they had a music video in the summer 2014 show where they had clips and videos of cats hanging around. We don't even know who owned the clips, but I believe it must have been some housewife that would make videos of her cats standing around meowing. Well, I don't know. In fact, none of us know who owned that video. Also, we don't even know how that owner saw the music video in one of the intermissions, nor do we know if they went to Chuck E. Cheese and saw that. If they did, I bet they decided to sue the hell out of the franchise, and they waited until March 2015 to do that. Unfortunately, from what was confirmed is that the department lost the case, and that made it very devastating, not only for the department itself, but also Chuck E. Cheese as a whole, and that caused it to change the way the shows are now. Now, I'm not sure if they lost the licensing from this, but I'm sure they lost money for the mechanical licensing that led to the company abandoning it after the lawsuit. I mean, they still kind of do parodies, but not as much as they used to. And what's devastating as well is that not long before the legacy locations became a thing, the company had to switch from floppy disks to the Navori system, which doesn't contain animatronic programming for new material, which I think is stupid for them to have the system not to have any of that, or just not put in like any of the programming for new songs as a whole. And for a while, when the legacy locations became a thing, I've been hoping for the company to repurchase the mechanical licensing from the Harry Fox agency so that the animatronics could do cover songs and dialogue again. Unfortunately, because of the new system and the laziness from the company saying, we don't want to spend any money on any cover songs, which they are not that expensive at all if you spend like 9.1 cents per song, but that depends on what song you're covering, that hasn't been the case, and that is very sad. It really is. Now, I do get that the animatronics would now be programmed for a few songs to avoid wear and tear, which isn't a bad move, but still, I have a feeling that each song, and I mean each song, will change every now and then, depending on the show team, which is something that they normally do. And what kills me is the fact that some locations would not be regularly programming the shows like they used to. I mean, I understand that, but that generally breaks my heart. And I feel very empty when people don't have emotions about it and just speak about it without any emotion. However, this situation is not the case for the CEI animatronics because it has been confirmed that they are being programmed for every single song that they're programmed to perform in, including the exclusive songs for the legacy locations. With the Cyberamics, on the other hand, they are only programmed for 2 to 3 songs, which is unfortunate. But it is relatively fair, because the CEI animatronics have a lot more movement than the Cyberamics, and I'm sure that the Studio C bots were almost as good as the CEI animatronics back when they were operational. However, besides the shows, I do hope that they could do a couple of more legacy locations, but we will have to wait and see about that. One that is potential would be Burbank, California, which, by the way, Burbank is actually one of those towns in Los Angeles that basically contains Studio C Alpha, which could be saved, and the store confirms that they're keeping it, but we do not know if that'll be true or not, since it is not confirmed by the company itself. And what about the road stage at one of these CEC locations in Canada? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. However, this could mean something, because what one of these CEOs confirmed is that Nanywood could bring the Studio C programming back, but only if their investments from the store increase, as part of their goal regarding the percentage. Now, I have a gut feeling it'll happen depending on that situation. I do wonder what this means for future shows, if they're going to bring like any dialogue back, like the way they used to do with Studio C. If that happens, I do hope that Chuck E. Cheese could make their shows more fireable and exclusive for the legacy locations that are keeping the animatronics. And we do hope that in the near future they'll bring the cover songs back. Well, if they repurchase the mechanical licensing, because if they do that without the licensing, that's considered copyright infringement, and we don't want that. I mean, we had cover songs from every single decade that are licensed, and there were some favorites of mine, like Born to Be Wild, Funky Town, Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Maniac, Take on Me, Achy Breaky Heart, Turn the Beat Around, Footloose, Everybody Have Fun Tonight, Crocodile Rock, Cupid Shuffle, Don't You Forget About Me, etc. I've gone into some of those because of Chuck E. Cheese. You know, I sincerely hope that they do that with new material of songs and show tapes, as well as some old material, but with the singing being redubbed, since most of the cover songs that Chuck E. Cheese did from the past has the voices of characters that changed over the years. And what about some of the songs from Bowling for Soup? I mean, Jared Reddick voices Chuck E. Cheese, so I mean, why can't they perform any more songs that literally has a band member that is literally involved in another thing like Chuck E. Cheese? And let me tell you this, if that ever does happen, then I will be more than happy to come back to the Chuck E. Cheese fan base, but not in the same way. With that being said, I do hope that the company keeps this up while focusing on other things that are more important to this generation. Please make it occur, CEC. So that's it, guys. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. I really do hope you all understand what I'm talking about here regarding how the legacy locations should have like better future content, you know, just for the locations that are keeping the animatronics, and comment about what your thoughts are regarding this whole idea and what they should do based on the pros and cons that we've been giving Chuck E. Cheese. for quite a while. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, this is me, Byron, signing off.